Happy Arvo, and hello. Thank you so much for joining me today. It is truly an honor. How are you guys doing? I saw this video pop up today, 11 things you must know about Australians at work. I thought that was kind of a funny title at first. It's like, what do you need to know about Australians at work? What does that mean? It sounds like a road signs. Australians at work. Like, beware. Australians at work. Like, you gotta be careful around Australians at work. But it's meant to be interpreted like about working in Australia. I think is more like how I would say it. You know, it says, how polite are Australians at work? Maybe you guys are just super laid back at home and on the beach. You're kicked back, you're relaxed. But at work, I don't know. It's interesting. It's really interesting to think as an American, like moving to Australia, if I was to do that, you'd have to get a job, presumably. And that would be a really, really scary thing to have to find a job, and you would have no idea what to expect. So I'm curious to see what it's like to work in Australia. Let's see.
Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to talk about the Australian workplace.
Oh yeah. Let me just shout out real quick. Living Simply Australia is the channel. I think I've seen one of her videos before. It was good. So go check out her channel.
Culture and what it is like to
Workplace
work in
culture.
Australia, especially if you're in a professional job. So if you're interested, keep watching.
I am interested.
What's expected behavior in an Australian workplace? Australian workplaces
Are you expected to wear shoes? Or is it like the grocery store?
tend to be very informal, and most organizations have a horizontal or flatter organizational structure. This means that people tend to work in teams and all employees are considered equal, and everyone's opinions are usually considered and heard.
Oh my God,
of course,
this sounds like some kind of paradise.
this depends on the company. There are companies that are very, very hierarchical.
Somehow that sounds the opposite of America. Wait, now she's saying it's hierarchical.
And heard. But of course, this depends on the company. There are companies that are very, very hierarchical, and that means that usually decision making is at the top, and then everyone else does.
That's America.
The boss wants. Typical work hours in Australia, especially in office-based jobs, are from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. But there's a lot of flexibility in work hours, and depending on the employer, you can actually negotiate.
Hold on. Whew. I think my computer was like this close to running out of space as I was recording, and I saved it. So let's continue. I was going to say, I want to know how long the lunch break is. Because here in America, a lot of places will give you like 20 minutes. No joke.
With them your different work arrangements, and you may start a bit late and then leave the office a bit later as well. Australian workplaces and Australian people in general are super relaxed and very, very laid back. Australians also tend to be super friendly and always laughing and smiling and making jokes.
Of course they are. They live in Australia. They get to go to the beach after work.
Is that you call everyone by their first name or nicknames. And
that's nice.
If you have a bit of a long name, for example, if your name is Susan, they're going to call you S. So they call you by your initials. And I know that this is something very common in English-speaking countries. And yeah, it's great.
They call you, I've never heard that in my life. They call you, if your name is Susan, they might call you S.
Something very common in English.
I've never heard. No one's ever called me R. Yo, R. No. But I like, that's interesting. That's interesting.
Speaking countries, and yeah, it's great. Australians are also very, very polite and very respectful, and that's something that I love about Australia. And the expectation is that everyone says thank you, please, sorry, apologies, excuse me, no worries, my pleasure. And there's a lot of respect when you talk to people. I
have to say, my pleasure. If you ever come to America, go to Chick-fil-A. When you say thank you to a Chick-fil-A worker, they have to say, my pleasure. It's very, I don't know, I like it. Sorry, I don't normally drink or anything while I'm filming, but that just reminded me of that because I went there today. My pleasure.
Having said that, Australians can also be very direct in comparison to other cultures, and they really, really value honesty.
I've never heard that.
If you have a question or you didn't get something that your boss told you, just ask again, say, hey, I didn't get that. Can you say that again, please? For them, when people ask questions, this means that they are engaged and interested and willing to learn. Another great thing that I love about working in Australia.
I feel like here in America, people can sometimes be a little bit like not as direct in kind of a fake way, like, if you know what I mean.
Is that workplaces tend to be very multicultural. So it's likely that you'll have colleagues from all over the world, but also colleagues who are from your same country and who speak your same language. And this is great. But in the Australian workplace, it's generally not considered professional when you speak in a language that your colleagues can't understand. So if you're at work and you have someone who speaks your same language, try to stick to English only. This is out of respect.
That's very interesting, because here in America, somehow that's become like a touchy subject, sort of. Not specifically at work, but pretty much anywhere. Like, it's considered racist to want people to speak English, if that makes sense. Like some people, I'm just saying some people, it's interesting. It's kind of like a touchy subject.
For your
But obviously it makes sense, especially at work. Like, everybody needs to be able to understand each other.
colleagues who can't understand what you're saying, you may be making fun of them, but they don't have a clue. So speaking in language other than English is not super professional. Bear that in mind.
That would be convenient if you're trying to make fun of your boss and you and your coworkers speak a different language. It would be convenient.
And speaking of multicultural diversity, people from different cultures behave in different ways at the workplace. In the case of Australia, it's common practice to look people in the eye when you're talking to them. That is, make direct eye contact, both with females and males. When you greet someone for the first time,
Okay, I mean, I've gotten better at eye contact. I don't know, I feel like eye contact is an interesting thing. You have to walk a fine line between being like making someone uncomfortable or seeming like disrespectful, like you're not looking at them.
It's common practice to shake their hand and say, nice to meet you too. And when you say bye, you shake their hands or you just say bye from a distance.
You know, that clip made me think, here in America, shaking hands, it's typically considered more respectful if you stand up. Like if someone's coming to shake your hand, you stand up to shake their hand.
From a culture where when you meet,
at least here in the South, in the Midwest, like traditional values, you stand up to shake someone's hand.
Someone new or someone you know, or your boss or your colleague, you usually kiss them on the cheek, and this is not appropriate here.
Not in Australia.
In Australia, I have a friend who came to work here.
Not in America either.
On her first day, she kissed her boss on the cheek, and her boss was taken aback.
He was divorced that night.
He was like, what are you doing? And poor my friend, she was just so used to greeting people in that way. And so, heads up, that's not appropriate in Australia.
The boss divorced his wife and came back to work the next day expecting he had a new girlfriend, and she was like, I was just saying hi.
Okay, now, what are the behaviors that you should avoid in the Australian workplace? Someone says something to you and you didn't get that or you didn't understand it. Instead of saying, what? Say, sorry, pardon.
What?
Can you say that again, please? This is a bit more professional and more polite. Australians really...
Okay, that's here in America, that would be pretty nitpicky. I personally don't really... I guess it would just depend how formal I was trying to be. If I was in the middle of like a business meeting, sure, I wouldn't just be like, what? But if it's just informal, you're doing work with a colleague and you're like, what? Not a big deal, at least here in my experience. She's probably talking about a more professional environment.
We love punctuality, so don't be late to work or meetings. This is something that's considered rude. And if you are late, let your manager or the person who you're having the meeting with know that you're going to be late, and yeah, just give them a heads up. Avoid swearing or making jokes or comments that may come across as racist or offensive in the workplace, because Australia has very strong anti-discrimination laws. For example, making comments about someone's appearance or or treating them differently because of their gender, their ethnicity, background. This may come across as discrimination and you can get
I wonder how those
fired.
just for making comments about someone's looks. I mean, that's probably inappropriate anyway at the workplace, but if it's like an innocuous comment like, "Oh, I like your hair." I'm sure that's maybe obviously that's fine, probably, right?
In Australia for this. So be mindful of that. Talking or debating about politics or religion is not common in Australia, so avoid these kind of topics. And as you may know, Australians are very well known all around the world for calling everyone mate in a very friendly way.
Yes.
There you go, Mike.
But if you're in the workplace, this is not considered
Aw,
professional.
man.
Again, this depends on the industry. I have some friends who work in construction and saying mate to their colleagues is
I bet they call their colleagues all sorts of things much worse than mate in the construction, if they're anything like American construction workers. And I like those guys are cool. I respect that. I think that's kind of the way to live. Like there's here in America, construction workers super laid back. Now on the other hand, they can be rude, but you know what I mean.
very, very common, and that's fine. But just to be safe, avoid saying
I would take it as a compliment if I was working and someone called me mate.
mate or using a lot of slang. As I said before, Australia is super multicultural, and that's one of the best things about working here. Because of this, you're going to get to meet a lot of people from all over the world and different cultures. And I think this is one of the
That's
best
interesting.
things.
Is that just because it's such a desirable place to immigrate to? Like there's all sorts of people from around the world moving there. Kind of like America, especially in a city like New York City. Super multicultural in New York City, but she must be referring mostly to the big cities, right? Sydney, Perth. Like that's where the multicultural melting pot is, right? I would bet.
Because it's really, really going to open your mind. I'll give you an example. Before coming to Australia, I had never ever tried Indian food in my life.
Neither have I.
The truth is that I never really had access to it. It's not very common in my country. So when one of my colleagues from India heard this, she couldn't believe it. So the following day, she cooked and brought me a dal makhani, which is an amazing Indian dish. And since then, I've loved.
What an amazing gesture. Isn't it funny how just doing one thing like that, I mean, what an incredible gesture. It's just kind of a lesson in life. Like, I mean, you cook yourself food all the time, right? If you just cook one dish for someone else as just a gesture of kindness, what a huge like compliment. I'm just saying.
Indian food. It's one of my favorite foods in the world. If I hadn't been working here, I would have never been exposed to these kind of cultures. Yeah, I think that's one of the best things about Australian workplaces. And speaking of cultural diversity, Australian workplaces usually celebrate different cultural festivities, such as Chinese New Year, Diwali, Ramadan.
I don't even know what Diwali is, to be honest.
Yeah, that's amazing as well because it really opens your
I'm just gonna search that real quick. Diwali. I probably sound dumb as usual. You know, it is what it is. But it's a Hindu festival. Oh, that looks awesome. Hindu Festival of Lights. I want to celebrate this. When is it? Oh, it's coming up.
Ramadan. Yeah, that's amazing as well because it really opens your mind about all these different cultures and
I'm all for it. Any reason to like celebrate, eat food, have a festival, and hopefully get off work? Heck yeah, let's celebrate all the different cultures.
And history and traditions, so it's pretty valuable. After work drinks, it's also very common in Australia. This usually happens on Fridays or Thursdays, but it can be any day of the week. After a long day at work, you go to the pub with your colleagues and have a beer and snacks and just talk about life in general. And that's super, super common in Australia. Takeaway coffee is also...
Do you invite your wife? Or are you like, hey, I'm going out to the pub? I mean, that's normal here too in America.
Pretty big in Australia, especially Melbourne. The coffee culture in Melbourne is huge, and
Oh yeah, I know you guys love Starbucks. Just kidding. This coffee looks... What on earth?
See everyone in the
I don't even know what to say it looks like. I can't tell if it looks really good or really bad.
You see everyone in the morning walking around the city with their reusable cups, going to the cafe next door with their colleagues and having a takeaway coffee, or just sitting in the cafe and having meetings there as well. And going for lunch with your colleagues is also something super common in Australia, usually to celebrate birthdays or some work event. And work breaks usually go for 30 minutes or 1 hour. But I talk about all that in my next video, so stay.
That's what I wanted to know, because breaks here in America, it varies very widely. I mean, you can get places with an hour, you can get places with half an hour, you can get places with 20 minutes. Yeah.
Stay tuned. And of course, most workplaces in Australia have end-of-year parties, and I think this is very common in all countries. The end-of-year event is usually in December, and you go and dance and eat and drink with your colleagues and have a big party and celebrate the end of the year.
I feel like here in America, she makes it seem like a lot of fun there in Australia, but here in America, those are usually like people are trying to find an excuse not to go to the end of year workplace party because it's I don't know. I don't think they're as fun here in America.
And drink with your colleagues and have a big party and celebrate the end of the year. Okay, if you want to know more about the Australian workplace culture, including salaries, work hours, how many weeks of holidays do we get per year, check out my next video here. I talk about everything that you need to know.
Well, I'm definitely going to watch that just because I want to know how many weeks of vacation you get in a year. I guarantee it's more than America. I think. I mean, honestly, a lot of that was similar to America. And I have kind of realized that about Australia. Australia certainly has a huge breadth, is that the right word? Of its own unique culture and accent and the way you talk and some cultural differences. But compared to most other countries, we're pretty similar. We're not so different, you and I. Australia and USA, that is. Anyway, that was a cool video. Go check out Living Simply Australia. Link down below. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Or at least I hope I will. I mean, I'll be here. I hope you are too. Subscribe if you want to. Goodbye.